Since 1986, Gary Michael Heidnik abducted, assaulted, and tortured 6 women in his Philadelphia basement. Gary Heidnik resembled Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. He forced his victims to abuse each other and ate one of their bodies. Bishop Heidnik, head of the United Church of the Ministers of God, was the genuine Buffalo Bill killer to the 50 members of his Philadelphia flock in the 1980s. His unique Bible interpretation was shared every Sunday in his home. Could they have thought that Buffalo Bill killer Gary Heidnik had 6 women locked in a pit in the basement under their feet? After a tough start, Gary Heidnik, born in Eastlake, Ohio on November 22, 1943, learned to manage others. He claimed his father beat him and insulted his bedwetting by forcing him to hang his dirty sheets for the neighbors. After graduating, he joined the army. Heidnik briefly worked as a nurse after his 13-month discharge for schizoid personality disorder before using religion to dominate people. In 1971, Gary Heidnik founded the United Church of the Ministers of God in Philadelphia with 5 members and $1,500. It flourished rapidly. His cult raised over $500,000. He also learned to control people, which he used on the women he kept in his basement. He was previously charged with sexual assault but never served time. He was even charged with spousal rape of Betty Disto, his 1985 Filipino mail-order wife who left him in 1986 but gave him a son, Jesse. Heidnik had 2 more children with 2 more women, both of whom complained of his abnormal sexual habits and tendency for locking them up. But soon, such tendencies would deepen. In 1986, Gary Heidnik captured Josefina Rivera, his first victim. He reportedly made her his collaborator, which is hard to believe. However, he captured her as brutally as any of his other victims. Rivera, like all of Buffalo Bill's victims, was a prostitute who was lured into his home by the promise of money and sex. Heidnik choked Rivera as she redressed. He then chained her and superglued the bolts in his basement. Her life sped by. All I could remember was a film projector of things that were going on in my life, Rivera later said. Like flipping back, Gary Heidnik thrashed her until she stopped screaming. He put her into a pit, boarded it, and shut her in. Only minor breaches in the wood covering overhead let light in. In 3 months, he abducted 5 more women like Rivera. They were choked, tied, thrown into the pit, walled up, and raped or tormented. After her release, Rivera said, "Any time that you're cut off from the world outside, whoever's holding you captive, since he's your sole outside contact, you'll like him. He's your only hope." Rivera joined Heidnik and appointed her the women's boss. He was dividing the women. He would bring her hot chocolate and hot dogs and let her sleep outside the hole if she did what he ordered. But he warned her that disobeying him could cost her all her privileges. Disobeying him was risky. Heidnik would starve, beat, and torture a disobedient woman. He sometimes wrapped duct tape around their mouths and carefully inserted a screwdriver into their ears to watch them squirm. Rivera knew she had to help torture to preserve her rights. He had her fill the pit with water, tie a stripped extension cord to the other women's chains, and electrocute them as he watched. Deborah Dudley died from the shock. Heidnik scarcely responded. "Yeah, she's dead," he remarked after scrutinizing her body. "Now my basement is peaceful again." Sandra Lindsay, a mentally challenged lady Gary Heidnik lived in shortly after Rivera, died in that cellar more horribly than Dudley. Gary Heidnik punished Lindsay by starving her. She froze as he tried to feed her again. He unchained her and she fell. Women have a few seconds to panic. Heidnik ordered them to cut out their bullshit or die. He took her body upstairs and hacked it apart. He baked her ribs, boiled her head on the stove, and froze her arms and legs after neighbors complained about the scent. He crushed her meat, mixed it with dog food, and gave it to the other ladies. 3 women remained punished. He had allowed them watch TV a few days before, and one had irritated him by stating she was so hungry that the dog food in an ad looked good enough to eat. Heidnik informed her that she and the other 2 women would eat dog food with Lindsay's body parts in it, though some reports indicate he made it up to establish an insanity defense. But they had no choice: eat her or die. "If it wasn't for me eating her or eating dog food, I couldn't be here today," said Jacqueline Skins. Josefina Rivera saved everyone, accomplice or not. Heidnik baited additional women with her towards the end. He let her out to assist him pick up women and bring them home, always keeping her close. She got these temporary vacations out of the basement with her kindness. After assisting Heidnik abduct a seventh victim on March 24, 1987, she convinced him to let her see her family for a few minutes. They decided he would wait at the petrol station and she would return. Rivera disappeared. She then dialed 911. Gary Heidnik was arrested at the gas station and his nightmare house ransacked. The women were released after 4 months of torture. Gary Heidnik was convicted and executed in July 1988 despite his insanity argument. His family unsuccessfully tried to get him off death row in 1997, and he attempted suicide in January. On July 6, 1999, Heidnik was executed in Pennsylvania. Heidnik inspired Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs a decade earlier while in prison. Heidnik's crimes were reminiscent of the characters' House of Horrors and basement confinement of women. Heidnik's cult's knowledge is unclear. They attended church after his detention. Heidnik's followers kept attending Sunday services at his residence despite all the public coverage about his den of women and his violence. Tony Brown, a devotee, tortured women with Heidnik. He considered himself Gary Heidnik's best buddy. He witnessed Heidnik starve Lindsay to death, dismember her body, and wrap her limbs in dog meat. Brown was mentally challenged. According to his lawyer, Heidnik manipulated him because he was retarded, and black. Heidnik's neighbors say his cult fits this description too. He held Sunday religious services. One neighbor said, "Many came, usually mentally retarded." Gary Heidnik manipulated his followers like Rivera. That may be the scariest element of the story. Gary Heidnik was more than a sadist who tortured, killed, and ate a cellar full of women. He got help.